Hey, this is Brent,
Hey, this is Jordan.
What's up? This is Matt.
Hey, this is Sean.
and this is the Digital Ascent Podcast.
Cool. Well, welcome Digital Ascent, everybody, for our, episode 0029, which is also our 30th episode since we started with 0000.
That's true.
Yeah, it is. It is worth mentioning, Brent. There is that sweet on-air light basically there at the top. And
True.
so I think that we probably could have rolled it and it may have been okay in the end. All right. So now that that's out of the way, we're going to be covering some current events tonight. We're talking about X getting rid of the block button. There we go. Send the live message to everybody in our Discord and spam everyone. Should have done that first, but whatever. We'll talk about 23andMe and the fact that they got breached and now they've got a giant settlement that sucks for them. And I guess in all their consumers as well. And then we'll talk about AT&T and the fact that the pain keeps on coming. They've got to pay more fines. It's still not that much money to them, but I think it still sucks for them also. As Brent mentioned, we've got a special guest with us tonight. His name is Thomas Ritter. He is a partner and breach attorney from Ritter Gallagher. I had the pleasure of getting to listen to Thomas speak twice now. I met him through the Nashville Technology Council, and him and his partner came in and gave a very eye-opening led a very eye-opening discussion about what you should and shouldn't do during a breach and when you need to retain outside counsel, and the importance of retaining outside counsel and why having just in-house attorneys doesn't necessarily cut it. And gosh, I liked what he had to say so much. I thought that it would be awesome to just have him on here, and he's a pretty cool dude. And so he opted to show up and have a chat with us and lay some knowledge on us. So with all that in mind, Thomas, I'm going to cut loose to you and let's just do some, give us some background about yourself, your company, and why, people need to return your services or whatever. And then, we'll do that quick stuff and then we'll hop into current events. So Thomas, all you.
Probably the best introduction I've ever been given, if I'm being honest. The fact that you've heard me speak twice and invited me to this makes me immensely happy because usually people are a lot dumber once they've heard me speak. So,
Thomas, I just want to throw out here that Matt's been talking about this for a very, very, very long time. So there's been a little bit of prep that's gone into it. And so just wanted to let you know the excitement was mutual on this side as well.
Mm-hmm.
No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you guys having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation. And yeah, I have been practicing law, hard to believe, for almost 10 years. I've been doing solely privacy and security stuff for about the last 6. And then this past March, I actually opened the doors to my own shop with a former colleague that I had worked at a prior firm, Ryan Gallagher. And yeah, we've hit the ground running, and much like you guys, privacy and security is what we kind of eat, breathe, and sleep, right? So we're really passionate about it. In a nutshell, what we do as attorneys on a day in, day out basis is we help clients with everything from, general privacy and security compliance, dealing with, if you're in a regulated industry, all sorts of frameworks, to doing things like executive tabletops where we simulate cyber incidents, to then, I know the topic of discussion for tonight, routinely advising clients on what to do when they've had a security incident. And not to get ahead of ourselves, but that incident, turns into a definable breach that then has some reporting obligations on the back end. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I do and what our firm does. And as I said, look forward to the discussion. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And just, throwing it out there as, a little wet your whistle, do we want to retain you before a breach happens, or are you the person we call after the breach happens, or both?
Man, you are the ideal prospective client. What a question. I think in a perfect scenario, we feel like we can really mitigate all of the risk that comes with going through a very unfortunate incident, right? Whether that's ransomware, business email compromise, you name it. If we can get in and learn, about your technological environment and kind of familiarize ourselves with some of the shortcomings, right? Because for everyone. There always are some. We feel we can provide more effective counsel on the back end when that inevitable incident does arise. So, more often than not, I would say companies usually reach out to us reactively when they've had something go wrong. But in a perfect scenario and world, all of our clients would reach out ahead of time and be like, guys, help us save money and and do a better job at securing all of our stuff. So,
Man, spoken like a true security industry professional. I feel like anyone I've ever heard talk about it has those things to say. Okay, cool. So that was a nice preview into, a little bit about Thomas, and then a preview about the stuff we're going to talk about later. Let's go ahead and get into the current events. Number one is X is nerfing the block button. So the way this plays out, Jordy is already shaking his head in like the silly thing. So the way that this plays out is something like you can block somebody and they can still see all of your stuff, but they can't interact with your posts in any way. I'm just going to go out there and say, as somebody who's in security, and I'm a big believer in like a right to privacy, that I feel like a move like this is terrible. And I am thankful that I deleted my Twitter account 2 years ago or a year ago when Elon Musk took over and started acting all erratically at the very beginning of all this. I think that this is just a real great, it's hard to phrase it, but I mean, it gives people who are harassers and predators like that more of an opportunity to harass and act like a predator and target. And, people are used to block, meaning, we don't exist in the same universe anymore, basically. And this is obviously a change there. I just, I don't see any world where I'm like, yeah, this is cool. This is just like, this is good for the consumer. So, I don't know. That's my 2 cents. I'll let anybody take it from here. Jordy, you've been very animated in the background. So I guess speak your piece.
The piece will be short for once in Digital Ascent's history. I've been off Twitter for maybe 6 months, just coming up on, and it's great. So like, there used to be a time where either you or Brent would come with some kind of news of some feature being added or removed or something, and it would stress me out because it's like, man, I'm on this platform all day. This is where I get my news. This sucks. It sucks. And now I just feel like this massive weight has been lifted off my shoulder because I don't have to care anymore. I do feel bad for people that I guess I don't want to say feel bad because it's as easy as uninstalling the app, but all of my gripes or concerns, Matt, I think are in the same bucket as yours. Some semblance of a right to privacy would be awesome on some of these social media platforms. So it is kind of it's crappy.
It's crappy.
Yeah, that's my spiel.
It's terrible.
I think it
Brent?
brings the light to we had a conversation at one point, right? I forget what the actual core topic was. It was probably many episodes ago. I was actually looking at our notes and trying to see which one it was, but where I was kind of harping on, we don't want to see everything you got going on your social media. Like you don't have to post everything. You don't need to post. I've got friends and family that like they go on vacation and either they're dropping a million pictures during the vacation or they get home and like literally 3,000 pictures hit the Facebook feed. And I'm like, holy crap, man. First of all, cool. I'm glad you had a great time, but like a whole timeline of events. I think what the point we were trying to make at the time was like the security aspect of that of, I'm on vacation. I'm posting my every move. People know I'm gone out of the house, whatever, there's 2 different levels to it. I think like part of it is the user's onus. It's on them. It's, hey, if you really truly don't want someone to see what's going on with your life, then don't post about it. You're literally posting it to the internet where it kind of, you joked about this before we went live, Matt. It's on the internet. It's out there forever somewhere, right? It's on a server. It's accessible by somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I get the whole blocking thing. But I've never posted anything on that platform or any of these platforms that, I don't know. I don't get it. Like, what are people posting necessarily that matters, that they shouldn't be posting, or should be posting, I should say. So anyways, yeah, that's, I have that opinion about everything. Like, I have a Facebook account, and I have social media accounts for, I mean, just about everything, but I hardly use them. It's like a view only, it's read only.
Marla said the N word from 2016, 100%.
Oh my
So-
god. Wow.
I guess if some people made that choice, then yes, you wouldn't want that to be
I'm
seen.
lawyering up. I'm getting my lawyer right now. He's on the
Yeah,
call.
Thomas, what do I do? No, I'm kidding. I wouldn't have made a choice like that. Thomas, yeah, do you have an opinion on this, man? Do you care?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I'm like you from just a purely like privacy perspective. I just see a lot of problems with it. And I parrot what you said. I mean, when it comes to like cyber stalking, the laws and regulations to effectively police people that want to really harass people over the internet have not caught up to technology, right? And I mean, I by no means hold myself out to be, some attorney that dabbles in the space, but there is, right, overlap in privacy and security, and it's pretty terrifying that people can sit behind a computer and anonymously try to ruin someone's life with very little repercussion, it feels like. And when you get into like, and somewhat understandably so, how tech companies don't like to freely give over information on their users, then it becomes an issue for law enforcement to be able to subpoena the information necessary to put, a name to someone and find out a person's real identity, because almost everyone hides behind an alias. So I don't know. It's a slippery slope. I'm with you. I view this, as in totality creating more issues than there already are to begin with. But I do find it interesting that, is everyone on this recording now off Twitter? Because I myself got off a few years ago as well.
Brent, you off Twitter?
I
say
still
that?
have the accounts. I just don't use them. They're, like I said, they're
Yeah.
purely there like a read only thing, because there are certain outlets or people that I do like to follow and see what they've got going on, but that's it. I mean, I've maybe posted like a couple of hot takes just to see who I can piss off along the way, but other than that, yeah, that's it.
Marla had a few opinions on this. She said because back in the day they were posting wild stuff that gets them canceled nowadays, and so they block it so people can't pull it out on them. That's what I always see. Anyways, I think that's a good point, right? Let's see. And she says, "Oh, hi Thomas. Don't think I know you, but hi, good take. I agree with you for sure. Yeah, Thomas is a breach attorney and partner of Thomas Gallagher, and we brought him on tonight so we could interview him and he could give us his well-informed opinions basically on breaches and things like that. So hey, Miss Mandykins, how's it going? Happy to see you. All right, anyone got anything else on that? Are we ready to move on to 23andMe?
Just keep it pushing.
Let's
I'm
do
All
ready
right.
for this one.
All right, 23andMe. For those of you who don't know, 23andMe is a popular genetics company. You can basically go to any Walgreens or CVS and go grab their box and spit in a tube, and then you can sorry, all I have is jokes and none of them are appropriate at this moment.
I need
So-
you, Matt, to get through this, 'cause I've done a 23andMe. My wife's done one. I didn't know
Okay.
this was a thing. I'm not on Twitter no more, so I get news late. All right, so I'm ready to go, Matt. Give me
You're
the
on
Okay.
the edge of your seat.
yeah.
Yeah. So after you done spitting that thing, all right, there we go. That was okay. And then you send it off to this company and they'll tell you all sorts of crazy stuff about you. You have these genetic markers, which means that you're 1% this and 25% that. And I don't really care, whatever. I won't do this thing. I've never done this thing because I was terrified of something like this happening, a breach like this happening, but like more on like the government side, how long until healthcare companies and governments start being like, oh, well, what genetic markers show what, and start making decisions. And that's terrifying to me, Right now, all of this is, basically on its way to public information, which means healthcare companies and governments can start doing that. Hooray. Love to see that. But back down to the actual problem at hand. So it looks like we got a total of 6.4 million records exposed. I guess I didn't clarify in my research whether that was records or people, which Thomas, correct me if I'm wrong here, but there's a big difference between a record and a person when it comes to disclosures and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean the legal implications of that can be far-reaching
Mhm.
when you're talking about, having to deal with regulators or, in this instance, class action plaintiffs' attorneys.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It looks like the final settlement for this was $30 million. And I see that you added some notes here that this is what you would personally consider to be incredibly sensitive data. And then you have a note here about the cyber insurance. Do you want to dig into that a little?
Yeah, so 2 points about that. First, on the data. I mean, and you alluded to this, Matt, right? This is about as sensitive as it gets when you're talking about someone's like genome and genetic markers. And I think too, it's of note that in this particular instance, the threat actor was actually going after the DNA of Jewish and Chinese people, right?
Whoa. They were like, that's
yeah,
what they were hunting for?
it was.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
That's some
Which is
real
why I got a
1950s
little
stuff.
I got a little weirded out here because there's a lot of crap and my wife and I, like true idiots, stepped up and didn't just do the regular spit in the tube. Like we submitted for like all of the tests that you could do through 23andMe. So genetic stuff. I mean, there's a lot, right? So I better be getting a check for some of that $30 million.
Haha. LOL. Sure, they'll send you your $5 and offer you some credit monitoring.
I know. I was just about to say, please don't hate me for being the attorney on when I am not a class action attorney, but when the attorneys end up, recouping like 85% of the overall payout.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting. You're talking about very, very sensitive data. But there's that, and then I think the litigation itself might have kicked off in like sometime in 2023. So this didn't go on too long. Later in the episode, I want to make a kind of more elongated point on just the exponential rise in data breach class action litigation because it's really exploded. But then on the second part, it was interesting. I read in the news that it was mentioned that 23andMe, 25 of the $30 million payout was actually being covered by their insurance.
Man,
so
that's crazy.
So I mean, hey, there's two ways to look at that, right? It either, as a consumer, kind of probably pisses you off, or as a business, it's like it reinforces the importance and need for having a hell of a lot of insurance, cyber coverage. So, yeah, I don't know. And then lastly, this is actually the kicker because I've never seen this done before, and I could talk at length on kind of the communications aspect that goes into responding to an incident and having that incident be a reportable breach. But 23andMe's defense attorneys actually made a legal argument around this data breach class action that I had never seen before, where in essence they basically, in a pleading, and I encourage everyone that's listening to this to look this up. Wired had done an article about it, and I was aware of it back when that pleading first became public. And colleagues that play in this space with me were like, "What do you think of this?" And I'm like, "This is crazy and idiotic." Where the defense attorneys basically came out and said, like, "Yeah, well, even though their information was breached, we've actually found numerous instances of the named plaintiffs having had the same like username and passwords and information breached in other breaches outside of 23andMe. So it was it's not our fault, it's actually yours." It calls to mind for me like the you remember the Jason Bateman line from Dodgeball when he's sitting at the table and he's like, "It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it plays out." I mean, that's what this is, right? It's like, what? You're putting the onus and blame on affected consumers having poor password hygiene? Like, come on, guys. Like, from a PR standpoint, what are you doing, right?
That's crazy.
Especially when like it's kind of their responsibility to enforce password requirements and two-factor and everything they can do to secure this information. Yeah. That's ridiculous.
That second one, two-factor, yes. Password requirements, I mean, yes, also. But even if you look at NIST, NIST has very loose password requirements now.
True.
These people
Very
probably
true.
were they probably were meeting complexity requirements. It doesn't really matter if you are reusing your credentials. And I will once again just drop the adage of breaches beget breaches. And this is exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep.
So, man, that sucks. Thank God I didn't use them. Good luck, Jordy.
The next time we have a digital asset meet, it's not going to be me. My identity will have been stolen, and there will be a new Jordan here. Jordan 2.
Yeah. Man. All right. Next. AT&T's pain continues. So they paid like $300K or something to get the data erased, allegedly, which, feels like chump change. You probably would have paid a lot more.
They found out in couch cushions at the AT&T tower in Nashville. You know what I mean?
Right. So, but unfortunately for them, the FCC had something to say about this. And the FCC fined them $13 million. It was specifically, as I read it, that it was because they failed to destroy the data. And so, as you're thinking about data governance, it's important to think about how long do you need to keep the data, and to some degree, keeping it, or maybe to all degrees, keeping it at minimum necessary to execute business and meet regulatory requirements and so on and so forth. In this case, I think that they actually had a contract that explicitly stated that they needed to delete the data. And AT&T was like, how about I just stick it in Snowflake and nobody will ever think about it again?
They'll never find this. We've never been breached before.
But they did.
We'll be okay.
So it's pretty bad. I mean, I would guess, I don't know, it's $13 million. Is it really sure, that hurts, but
like chump change.
Yeah, they still
just a bigger couch.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. I mean, it's less than they're paying their CEO per year, if I had to guess. So I mean, it's less than one full-time FTE, depending on how you look at it.
They shook their pockets out, and out came $13 million.
Yeah, exactly, bro. That's what I see. So it's wild. Thomas, I see you added some notes here about how much the situation sucks, and then some more stuff about the FCC. Go ahead and take us off, man.
Yeah, I mean, I won't get too depth into it. You've already alluded to it some, but AT&T's had a rough past couple of years, right, as far as data breaches. So they had this one a year or two ago, which resulted in this settlement, but then they had the one back in March that I think was like 73 million of their customers. And then, oh man, we're out of the woods. Hopefully we have clear and smooth sailing the next couple of years with no breaches. Actually, wait, no. In July, it was announced that all of their customers had their information compromised.
I got comped in this one too, guys. I'm not safe anywhere.
They're everywhere.
All your text messages are out.
He's gonna have like 40 credit monitoring codes that he can use,
and none of them are gonna do any good.
Coming at this point, man, it's not even funny. I should start hanging them up.
But yeah, I think one thing that's interesting is I did see, and I specifically tried to find and was able to successfully do so this point on, for me, it's like the FCC settling for 13 million. Does that kind of take into account these subsequent breaches, or is that just the one from a year or two ago? And it's the FCC specifically stated to the media that an active investigation is continuing into these subsequent ones, which I'm like, interesting. Okay.
Good. Get them.
So there's that. But I think overall it just illustrates that, the FCC's historically not been a regulator that has prioritized kind of the enforcement of breach notification rules. I'm not going to nerd out too hard as an attorney and get into the weeds of like what that's looked like, but 20,000 foot overview, they have had a portal where if you're, a telecom carrier or a VoIP and you have to report a breach, you do so through a portal that they've created, but it actually has only in the past gone to the Secret Service and the FBI, which I'm like, this feels interesting. Kind of a very circuitous way to go about reporting. But that all recently changed. They promulgated some new rules last year. These rules actually went into effect this year, where in addition to putting law enforcement on notice, if you're someone that falls within the purview of the FCC's jurisdiction, you also have to report to the FCC, and they have a very short time frame. It's within 7 days of making that breach determination. So very long-winded way of saying, to me, this just is a demonstration of them kind of making this a priority moving forward and trying to hold companies like AT&T's feet to the fire, that they're going to enforce these rules and they're going to slap you on the wrist when you run afoul of them.
Good. Well, I hope that their wrist feels sufficiently slapped, and if not, I hope the subsequent slaps make them feel sufficiently slapped, because this stuff offends me. This one, being particularly offensive since it was call records and text message records, and I think I don't recall whether it was the data in the text messages. I know it was records for sure.
Yeah,
it's pretty offensive.
Yeah, I mean, it's on that point, when you're talking about CP&I, customer proprietary network information, I mean, that if you really drill down on that, it covers a lot of the things you talked about, which if we were like running a random poll, if we were like, how are you about, having your driver's license number exposed? Most people will be like, whatever. But it's like, how worried are you about, the text messages from the last 5 years and the contents thereof being exposed? People are probably like, not super psyched about that. So
yeah, no kidding. There's blackmail material somewhere in there, guarantee it.
A lot of politicians out there are like, okay, I
don't
want to be an AT&T customer right now.
Right. I do have some happy news on the end, though, to help us out here. They've promised us that they're going to do better. So we don't have to worry about this anymore, guys. They said, they looked at it, they looked at the problem, they looked at themselves in the mirror, and they said, we can do better than this.
We can do better,
and then
guys.
They looked at us and they said, we can do better than this, and we will.
AT&T is the Homelander of phone carriers. I can't stand them at all right now. The supervillains. I can't stand them.
The Homelander.
Okay. On that, we're finally going to get into the interview component of it. We've been rolling for like 30 minutes, so we probably won't hit everything that I wanted to hit. But so I guess let's just go through and cherry pick some of these things, Thomas, that you want to talk about that you think is cool. I guess let's start with what's the biggest and most common mistakes you see companies make during a breach. They reach out to you and they're like, oh my God, Thomas, my life is so bad. I'm making decisions. Am I making good ones? So if I, ask you, am I making good ones? And you look at my situation, you're like, no, you are not. What decisions have I just made most commonly?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd say more often than not, a big issue is doing everything in-house, right? Forensically, legally, like there's something to be said about having an outsider's perspective, having a unique and fresh set of eyes. And just speaking to the forensic side, I've dealt with many clients who, have large teams of engineers and people that are very proficient when it comes to information security. And it's not so as it is, and you could say this about a lot of things, right? Like when you're looking at the same stuff every day, you kind of almost look at it through the lens of what's ordinary, what and threat actors, man, they're so good at being able to not even walk through the door per se, but like taking a sliver and a crack and finding their way through, almost like a little mouse, right? Or like an insect. They don't even need a doorway. They just need a crack. I hope that's the soundbite on this podcast when you guys put this out and try to get listeners. Right? That's the snippet, the 5 to 10 second snippet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, not hiring, external third-party forensic people to come in and look. I've had tons of instances over the years where clients had what they thought was like a very run-of-the-mill, fairly innocuous business email compromise that ends up turning into a full-blown catastrophic ransomware. And,
Oof.
that would have largely been prevented if they had brought external resources and help in that really surveyed the entire environment, right, and did an extremely thorough and detailed investigation. The other thing too, I mean, I think the same principle applies with using your in-house counsel. I mean, I have plenty of colleagues and friends that are great at what they do as a GC within large organizations, but this is a very nuanced practice area and specialty of the law. And it's like, unless you're routinely handling a large volume of incidents, it's just not something that you can kind of do on the fly. The analogy I've used in talks of the past is like, if you find out you have some really rare sickness, you're not really going to your general practitioner, right? And finding out what to do next. Like, you're going to go see a doctor that spends all of their time combating this issue and knowing how to treat and deal with it. And so we've had clients that, what they think is a contained problem legally around a breach, it turns into a much bigger one because their in-house counsel has tried to handle it and, at some point in time realizes it kind of goes beyond their area of expertise.
Yeah. That seems like a big thing. I know that when I've handled, incidents or potential breaches or things like that, I've always tried to be careful about, what I feel like is exactly in my wheelhouse. And when I need to feel like I need to go to my boss and say, look, I'm really good at everything that like all these other things I do for you every single day, but this is a digital forensics investigation. And I'm willing to do this, but first you need to give me some specialized training on it, type of thing. Right. It's important. I agree. It's really important to know um, where those lines are and where you can like safely, uh, I guess, do your job without, causing issues. I assume if you make, poor choices during those situations that you'll impact the evidence when you're going through it. Is that something that you see? Like, do people make that mistake also? So they get in and they're in a little over their skis, but they're like, whatever, dog, I can do it. Getting help's really expensive and, I can do it. I can, whatever, get it done. And then do you feel like people go in and then cause more issues and like by stumping on evidence or whatever?
Unequivocally so. I mean, right? It's like there's a very finite period of time when you're talking really about any incident, but I mean, let's just use the example of a ransomware where forensic preservation and evidence collection is of utmost concern. And oftentimes, organizationally, it's viewed through the context and lens of like executives being like, we're largely inoperable, right? Like, we're hemorrhaging money. Like, I don't care what you, the InfoSec team, my CISO or CIO need to do to get us back to being able to generate revenue. And so things like evidence preservation, evidence collection take a back seat to that. And the problem with that thereby becomes, it limits external specialists, it limits attorneys' ability to really analyze and candidly put a box around, my job. It's all about, at the end of the day, on the back end of a breach, information's been accessed. Is it protected information? And now what do you need to do? And a easy, clear-cut example that I often see is when you're talking about a ransomware, just shutting down systems left and right, versus like isolating those systems, taking them offline, you know, putting them almost in a state of hibernation. You shut them down. We've worked with the CrowdStrikes and the Mandiants of the world, and their guys come in, and it's like we now no longer have insight into, lateral movement from the threat actor because it's blown away a lot of the forensic artifacts. So these are like split-second decisions that people are forced to make that if to really hammer home the point of preparedness, try to think about and simulate and run through, scenarios via maybe a technical tabletop or an executive level tabletop, you can really formulate a game plan that serves you well, as opposed to when live bullets are flying and it's just like, okay, what the hell are we supposed to do now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. That one that you touched on, I feel like is especially hard. Do I shut down the machine or not? Right. Because in the moment you're saying things like, your boss is yelling at you, whatever's going on.
Yeah.
And you guarantee his boss is definitely yelling at him,
Oh
and all the
yeah.
way up the chain. And, it starts coming into this, well, do I want to stop spreading the infection? Or, that theoretically it might be worming around, there are wormable infections that can spread, on like a ratable basis. And, so do I want to stop the worming or do I want to know what's going on? Right. And I guess that's a very personal decision for the business to make when it comes down to it. So, do you see are there any other like situations that you see people just making overt mistakes on a regular basis?
Yeah, I mean, ransomware
Mm-hmm.
again is an easy example. You know, the company itself, the victimized organization, internally having someone reach out to the threat actor group.
Ah,
That's a big no. I mean, it's like we always impress upon the client the need to retain, um, professional negotiators that do this literally day in and day out. And as many people on this call and that are listening may already know, with ransomware and these threat actor groups, the proverbial clock starts when you actually respond to their ransom note and reach out to them, prompting, negotiations to then occur and timers, right? And the timer kicks into place. And so I've had instances where, you know, clients through no ill intent have had someone like a security engineer that's like, well, I know how to use Tor and I've been on the dark web, and they get the instructions from the note and they get on there and are like, what's the ransom demand? And it's like that timer then starts and shit gets fast really quickly, right? Where, it's 7 to 10 days of them being like, if we don't see a payment, we're going to post all the stuff we've exfiltrated from your environment onto our leak site. So that's a big one, right? And we could do a whole session on, man, ransom negotiations. It's such a
mm,
fascinating sub concept of incident response. And again, we don't do them ourselves, but we work in tandem with usually ex-law enforcement professional negotiators that do. And I will tell you too, anecdotally, that just a crazy story that illustrates how these threat actor groups operate as billion with a B, like $1 billion enterprises, right?
mm-hmm.
Especially some of the larger ones. I had a case many years ago where our negotiator was going back and forth with, someone overseas, and the initial demand I think was like 5 million, and they kept, they had lowballed and they were then getting closer to the middle and yada yada yada. This went on for a while, and the cadence of that is always usually, I mean, multiple times a day. For most of these threat actor groups, they're overseas, like I said, so you have to account for the time difference. And I didn't hear from the negotiator for like probably 36 hours, and I finally called him and was like, what's the deal? And he was like, we still haven't heard from him. And I was growing concerned. And I'm like, the client's wanting to know, what a status update on this. And he's like, all right, we've sent messages. I'll let you know as soon as I do hear back from him. And he finally pings me back and is like, I'm gonna send you a screen grab of our chat. And I get it, and it's, a member of this threat actor group, and he's like, hey, I'm so sorry that I haven't responded in the last like almost 2 days. My son was home sick from school and my wife's been out of pocket, and I've got a lot going on at home. And I was like, wait, what? Like, we're like, this is like, we're dealing with like a call center, right? Like, you know, Igor overseas like has a lot of shit going on in his orbit too, right? That's preventing him from being able to do his job. So
it's just a one-man shop, just a one-man trunk slammer sysadmin out there trying to fuck up people's days,
trying to make ends meet,
one
man.
at a time.
And they'll even say too, right? Like when you're talking about getting close to settling on a payment, they'll be like, we've got to run this up the chain of command and see if like our bosses will accept this number. It is, I can't even begin to describe how weird of a world it is that unless you're wading in these waters, on a frequent basis, it's I've been doing it now years, and it still blows my mind how it all works. But yeah.
Oh man, I'm gonna take you up on that someday, Thomas. Where you locked yourself in. I heard a commitment there to do another podcast with us, where you're gonna talk about nothing but ransom demands and silly stories that go along with it. So he's nodding. We got him. He's nodding.
I want to squeeze another question in here, just related to that ransom stuff. Thomas, have you, as long as you've been in the industry, have you seen like a shift or a change in how the bad actors handle? I imagine that maybe as you had come into the industry, the canned response for a bad actor that couldn't get back to the phone immediately was not, hey, I got a lot going on in my life right now. Sorry, it's taken me 2 days, right? So how is that? Has it gotten more lenient or more lax, or what's been the shift there?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's gotten more vindictive. 4 or 5 years ago, it was like there were negotiations for clients of mine, where we would have our negotiators play like the sympathy card. Like, we're a public school, right? You're impacting our ability to like teach our students, or we're a hospital, and we're seeing critically ill patients. And honest to God, these threat actors a lot of times would be like, we're so sorry, like we didn't even realize what you did, which I think speaks to a common misperception that organizations often have of like, we were targeted, right? Like they specifically have come after us. It's like, no, that's not how it works. Like, they're casting a wide net. They're seeing like what kind of fish they bring in, and half the time, Colonial Pipeline being an example, I mean, they didn't know it was Colonial until after the fact, and it was like a proverbial like, oh shit. So there was way more like humanization and leniency years ago, and now with RAS, ransomware as a service, and there being as many actors involved, where you may have like a well-known threat actor group that, to make a couple bucks, has turned around and sold a malware to like some no-name, pretty unsophisticated affiliate. It's like, it's difficult to kind of know if you're operating within the credo of like honor amongst thieves. And Matt and I have talked about this, but clients always ask, right? Like the number one question when they're dealing with ransomware is, if we buy the key, is it going to work? Like, can we trust them at their word? Or they're saying they're going to delete all our stuff. Are they going to do it? And I mean, we say, like, as far as deleting your stuff, no, it's there. I mean, they've probably already sold it by now. It doesn't change any of your legal obligations. But the more interesting one is, will the key work? And the vast majority of the time, the prevailing answer has been, and this is largely from the DFIR side. We rely on their insight knowledge, but it's like, these threat actor groups know that it's in their best interest to make good on their promise. And if they want to continue to get paid by victimized organizations, they are going to give you a workable decryptor. And as soon as they don't, or they can't, word's going to get around, and again, more specifically the DFIR firms, but then their advice flowing down to the clients are going to say like, don't pay these guys, right? And so even that kind of risk calculation has changed. And you know, we don't need to get too far into it, but like, look at Change Healthcare.
Yeah.
You know, massive healthcare breach that happened right here in our backyard. And you know, lo and behold, they paid I think it was $2 million ransom, and that's actually to a threat actor group that I've dealt with before. Go ahead, Matt.
I was gonna say they paid twice is my understanding. They paid the first guy, and there was this little like backstabbing honor, not so much honor amongst thieves, you know. And then they were like, oh, I guess we're just gonna pay the second time also, because what choice do we have? And I bet that first group was like, shoot, man, we should just ask for 44 million the first time.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, it was
like they obviously were willing to pay it.
Black Cat was the threat actor group.
Yeah.
I've had matters with Black Cat. I mean, game player in the ransomware world, and yeah, I mean, they had affiliates involved in that, and some little crony affiliate that didn't get his cut of the pie after the payment was made turned around and was like, well, you know,
I still got data. What you gonna do?
I got your data. Yeah, what are you gonna do for me, kind of thing. So I don't know. That really exemplifies like what this has evolved into. And you know, the fact that I've always like equated it to like the mafia, right? And how, I think it's a good analogy. It's like you have crime bosses and head of families that are doing like really awful shit, right? Don't get me wrong, I'm not condoning what it is they're doing, but like they've mostly like, you know, done it in a very organized fashion, and they've kept people in line. You know, they go club someone's kneecaps when they make a move that they're not supposed to, and that's like ransomware, or that was ransomware 2 to 3 years ago. And now you've got up and comers and, you know, smaller players that are wanting to make their mark and that are not abiding by the honor amongst thieves thing. And it's like, it's a freaking free for all.
It's okay. They'll come up with escrow next. They'll come up with an entire escrow system.
Oh my Lord.
Seriously, man. Like honestly, it's been really like, I hate using positive words like incredible, but it's been really incredible to watch the rise of like the ransomware as a service. And like, I do actually think that there are escrow like services available on the dark web. Like you can, you know, like if you want to purchase something on the dark web, that's not, you know, some nefarious stuff, you can do some escrow level things. And they take a little 10% cut off the fees or whatever. So I bet that eventually there will be escrows, but gosh, how do you trust a dark web escrow bro who's, you know, might see $22 million that could make just about anyone be like, bye, and you know, dip out with it.
And think about this. It's like I've often had clients ask me like, you know, how did it get to this point? And this is maybe grossly simplistic, but it's like cryptocurrency, right? Like,
yeah, it's a step for sure.
You know,
Makes
it's
a
a
difference.
huge step. It's like
it really
you can now transact, you know, massive sums of money anonymously, right? And we could get into like tracing digital wallets, and there are companies that do that, and the FBI has expended tons of resources on doing that, sometimes successfully so. But it's like, you know, you don't have to rob a bank anymore and leave the money in a mailbox. It's like, and I have clients sometimes that ask me, even on the preventative and like preemptive planning side, like, should we go out and get a wallet and like even put some crypto in it in the event that this happens? And I'm like, no, because, you know, I'm gonna advise that you pay a third party to do all this for you, right?
Yep.
So, yeah.
Let the FBI come after them when they pay somebody on the terrorist list.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're wrapping up on like an hour here. We had like 1,000 more things to talk about, but time flies, and you know, whatever. As we start wrapping it up, do you got any like stories that you want to tell, or any good campfire stories or whatever? I know you've got, for the record, I know that you have some. I don't know if you want to tell any of them live to the world, but I know that you got something there.
Yeah, I mean, right, like ensuring that everything remains fairly innocuous and anonymous, and not outing any clients. You know, one that I have told a lot over the years, I think I've even told you, Matt, is you talk about the insurance component. I once had a client, similar to the earlier story I told and the anecdote about, the negotiator reaching out to me before they share the shit sandwich with the client. Um, the negotiator, pinged me and was like, "Hey, we need to hop on a call." And usually that's, a sign of I'm here to deliver bad news. And
Yeah, I like to
I'm like,
deliver bad news that way too.
"What's up?" And they were like, "Yeah, we've lost all of our like leveraging power." And this negotiation had been going on for, I want to say, like a week or 10 days. It was a pretty long time. And the client, we had initially, the posture was we were just stringing them along. We were trying to like let the investigation itself unfold and glean intelligence on, what they had taken, so on and so forth. And then, the midway point and the latter half, it was like, okay, we're probably going to need a decryptor. Lo and behold, like the backups have been blown away and yada yada yada, things that oftentimes happen. I'm like, so you lost all your leverage? What, like, how? What happened? And he's like, check your email. And he sends me an email, and I open it, and it's a screenshot of their cyber policies declaration page showing how much they were insured for. And I was like, wait, the threat actor sent you this? And he was like, yeah, they sent us this, and we're basically like, shame on you guys. You've, been so misleading this whole time, trying to act like you don't have the funds when, you're insured for $5 million. So the price just went up $5 million or else. And it was like, holy shit. Like, these guys, actually found their cyber policy in the data that they'd exfiltrated and were using that as a means to, have the upper hand in the ransom negotiations. So I've told people this story, in particular in the insurance industry, and been like, female agents out there. Like, I would not, be sending your insureds their policy electronically. Like, send them a like copy in the mail for this exact reason, right? It's going to be on their network, and should they get hit by ransomware, these guys are good enough to be like, let's look for the insurance policy and see if they're insured for X amount of dollars. So,
gosh.
And I guess
that's
crazy. It's probably one of the downsides to everything that we have on file. You know what I mean? Just being digital now, right? Because what was it, like 60, maybe not 60 years ago? I don't know. Whenever Watergate happened, right? Like, these dudes had to like sneak into a building in the middle of the night to go sift through files. And now, like, we've got these bad actors going and using the literal policies that are put in place to protect, you know what I mean, for, I'm sure, large amounts of money on the organization side.
yeah.
And they're going and saying, hey, we know you lied, we caught this. And so it's like, it's, the game is almost, it's evolved a lot. And so it's very interesting to hear you talk about these things, Thomas, and understand, like, I don't want to say understand like it's new information, but it's reaffirming that, like, you kind of gotta treat your stuff serious. You know what I mean? For a lack of a better phrase at the moment, but
completely, yeah. And then I know, at the risk of going way far over, the last one too, that is probably one of my favorites. And like you said, Matt, I don't know if that's the right characterization when you're talking about something really awful happening, but this is symbolic of clients not oftentimes thinking about off-band communications or secondary channels of communication. And that's usually the first thing we bring up with clients is like, hey guys, like, if they've been in your network, odds are like they're in your O365. And we were brought in kind of after the fact of this particular incident, and we hastily jump on the scoping call, and we're getting brought up to speed. And as silly as it may sound, I'm very anal when it comes to these calls looking at all of the participants and their names and their numbers, and the attorney at the time that I was working this matter with was the one that was like, all right, let's just quickly do a roll call. And we start going through numbers, and there's one number that is not saying anything. And I like ping him, and I'm like, I mean, this particular number has not spoken up. And so the attorney's like, hey, and he rattles off the number, like, state who this is. Dead silence. And we're all just like, okay. And like the victimized organization's like, well, I think that's like Bill, right? Our CFO. And finally he says it again. And it's just this like very Russian sounding voice that's like, you need to pay us now.
Sorry, whoever's ears I just roasted
Oh
right
my
there.
It's
God.
the equivalent of somebody just sneaking into like an open meeting room. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
And
I mean, my jaw, like, and we weren't on camera, but like everyone was just like, oh my gosh, right? And like we immediately boot them from the Teams meeting, but it was like, holy shit. Like, so, you know, it's something that's always really stuck with me. And as I said, I'm hypersensitive and cognizant of when you're brought in under a ransomware scenario, you know, let's have a form of communication that we feel is as secure as possible, and let's not be relying on, you know, our run-of-the-mill everyday applications that have probably been infiltrated at that point.
That's a great story.
It
Thomas,
really is.
I love that one, my man. That was a great story.
I'm gonna go to bed with nightmares now, thinking of the
Yeah,
scary Russian
thanks,
sound on my phone.
Thomas.
I just don't want to hear how my Russian accent sounded. I bet it was so bad.
It actually wasn't. It wasn't bad, Thomas.
It was good. We liked it.
Yeah.
So speaking of things that are great, Thomas, you've been great. We've loved having you on here. I know that I have. I feel confident in speaking for Jordy and Brent. I see them both nodding.
Absolutely.
Guys,
Yep.
we've got to get all 4 cameras up here going at some point in
Absolutely.
time, or 5 if Sean makes it and we have a guest. Whatever.
I mean, it's possible. I just try to give people a little bit of privacy while they're not talking.
Well, I guess there's an argument for that too, and I don't know if I have much to say after my privacy rant earlier tonight. So, all right, as we wrap it up, I guess 2 things, Thomas. 1, do you feel like there's anything we missed? And then 2, if we need, breach help, or maybe we're just super proactive and whatever, how do we get in contact with you? So did we miss anything? How do we get in touch?
No, I mean, I think this was a great, segue and doorway into just ransomware in general. I mean, as I've said, there's a myriad of topics that you could cover when you're just from a very overarching perspective speaking about ransomware. So this was really fun for me. I always enjoy getting the chance to do this and let people, in on the inside of what it's like being a practicing attorney in this space. And as far as, how people can reach out to me, if you go to our website, rittergallagher.com, we have a fillable form that sometimes we get some pretty weird stuff submitted to, I'm not going to lie. So if you are looking for advice or help, I hope it's legitimate, but you have the fillable form, and then feel free to also email me. It's my name, Thomas at rittergallagher.com. And, as cliche as it's going to sound, we really truly mean it when we tell people we're here to help. I like to buck the concept and trend that comes with attorneys of like, as soon as you call me, you're on the clock and I'm billing for it. I love to answer kind of one-off questions and have conversations and speak with people. And if it leads to me sending you an engagement letter and getting to do, work with you as an attorney and client type capacity and relationship, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. So.
I want to take a moment and actually just vouch for that statement, Thomas. People say stuff like that. They don't always mean it, but I actually want to vouch for that statement. Thomas and I have been out, we've had drinks, and, I spent most of the time just picking his brain about like this, that, and the other thing. And, I found it, very like, just awesome from at a professional level. Thank you very much, Thomas. And I ran into his partner, Ryan Gallagher, at a CISO event for the Cyber Risk Alliance last night. And I had some very specific questions about incident response plans versus, playbooks. And, he tapped me on the side as the conversation was winding down and said, "Hey, Matt, give me a call sometime and we can talk through that." Just he'd be happy. It sounded like he'd be happy just to, help me develop my understanding in this space. So, um, as anybody who, follows me or talks to me knows, I'm a big believer that security is a team sport. I think that we rarely treat it as a team sport, and that sucks. But it's the reality of what it is. So, um, you know, Thomas, this is like, I applaud you and I applaud your partner, Ryan. Um, you know, being part of the team basically and contributing even when you're not 100% sure it's going to turn directly to revenue. So, um, well, folks, with that, I think we're going to wrap it up. This has been awesome. I love this conversation. Thomas, I'd love to have you back on again. I feel like there's more to talk about here for sure.
Yeah, we need to do a part two.
Awesome.
And I'm not just saying that to say
yeah,
that,
for sure.
Thomas, I hope to have you on another episode, man. This is a good conversation.
I would be honored, guys, with the caveat that I'm not coming on unless I get some digital assent merch.
He wants some
Oh,
swag.
there we go.
He wants
There
some
we go.
swag. All right, we'll
We can
get you
make it
some
happen
swag,
for
bro.
sure.
We got, hey, look, the
not-
t-shirts, they are champion t-shirts. They are thick cotton. They are
Ooh.
nice,
I
bro.
didn't even know that. Okay,
They are
champion.
nice. Yeah, I got
Quality
I got the digital ascent t-shirt also. I didn't have it in me to also buy the digital ascent throw to go on the bed behind me, but I am going to get that digital ascent throw sooner or later, and I'm going to be ready to rep out. You know what I mean? Dogs.
Such a low key flex. I love it. Like, is this a shirt that I'm going to use to like dust once a year all my furniture in my house, or am I actually going to wear this on my?
No, you're gonna
person,
wear
my
this,
body?
dog.
So
What do you mean? What do you mean? Are you gonna dust? You ain't gonna dust with my shirt, with my company shirt, bro. Our company shirt. Sorry, that's our company, guys. That's my bad.
That's only Matt's
You-
company.
It's mine, and you ain't gonna dust with it, dog.
Oh boy.
You're gonna wear this out whenever you go to the bar, and then you're gonna talk about cybersecurity and be like, "These guys know about cybersecurity." Sorry, these guys know about cybersecurity.
Can this be the second snippet that
Absolutely.
just,
I
like,
was literally
encapsulates
just
the,
thinking, I was like, this will be
the
great.
episode?
Great, awesome. All right, guys. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's been a blast. I love doing this. And Thomas, thank you so much for coming on. Brent and Jordy, you guys are awesome also.
Everybody's
Cyber is
awesome.
fun,
I love
guys.
it. Thank you,
Right on.
Thomas.
Yeah, it's
Appreciate
fun.
you guys.
Listeners, thank you very much. You guys are why we're here.
Absolutely.
All right, folks. Thank you very much. And
Bye,
bye.
guys.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Ascent podcast. Check us out at digitalascent.tech and join us on Discord. Until next time, take care.